Welcome to this edition of Business Supes, where we talk with successful business leaders, learn a little bit about them, their business, and of course, their business superpower. Today, I am joined by Robb Higdon from Fast Fixer. Robb, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Eric. It's nice to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Oh, you're very welcome. Why don't we kick things off and just have you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your business? What's your origin story?
Sure. Yeah. So I am originally from Oklahoma. I was born and raised in Muskogee. So, the Okie from Muskogee, Merle Haggard song. My contention is you can only claim that moniker if you were born and raised in Muskogee, but I have friends that, have passed through that also claim that.
Hmm.
Um, I went to school at Oral Roberts University. It's where I got my undergraduate degree, and then have always had an entrepreneurial itch, even as an undergrad, and had lots of ideas. Uh, some of them good, some of them not so good. So I'm thankful I didn't pursue everything that kind of popped into my brain. And then I married a girl that I met at ORU who was from Washington State. We started having kids and moved up there for 20 years. And then I came back to Tulsa a little over 4 years ago to start a healthcare business with uh, some some people that I actually relationships that I had through ORU, and so built that. We sold it a couple years ago now, and I've been just continuing to scratch the entrepreneurial itch that it's like poison ivy. You know what I mean? It just doesn't go away.
So it sounds like Fast Fixer obviously isn't your first business then. So how many different businesses have you owned?
Fast Fixer was my third, what I'll call a real business that I started.
Okay.
And when I say real business, I mean that, like I'm either the owner or a partner. It generates revenue. It provides either a living for me, or it provides a living for other employees. But
Hmm.
probably over, since getting out of college, I've probably five, I guess, total that
Oh,
I've
wow.
I've I've owned or been involved in or had partners in. So yeah, I guess I've found a way to scratch the entrepreneurial itch a couple of times.
Yeah, it sounds that way. So Fast Fixer, for the folks who don't know what that is, why don't you tell us a little bit about it and what you guys do?
Sure. Yeah. So quite simply, Fast Fixer is a service provider of maintenance services, repair and maintenance, handyman, use any one of those terms, dedicated to property managers. So we are strictly a B2B concern. We're not a B2C, and don't have designs on being a B2C. Um, the idea for that came while I was in Washington. So back in about 2018, I have a friend who is a realtor, a, a property manager, investor. He's kind of made a business out of real estate, does well. He's a
Hmm.
very um, well, the term, he or she is a student of the industry. People use that expression,
Right.
and he is very much a student of his industry. He knows the Washington real estate market very, very well, and we're friends. I've known him since a couple of years after I moved to Washington State, and we would, we had never done business together. I mean, I bought a couple of houses from him, but we just became friends, right? And we'd go have a beer every now and then and catch up. How your kids, how's the wife, how's
Hmm.
business, and we're sitting there in this place that we would hang out pretty regularly. And like, how's it going? And he's like, Rob, I can't keep a handyman. And I'm like, really? Well, tell me about that. And he's like, well, they're they're sort of skilled, but not skilled labor. You need to have abilities and talents, and you need to have know-how, but you're not charging 80. You're not a plumber or an electrician, right? You're not
Right.
a journeyman. So you just need to be handy, and you need to be able to be reliable, which anybody who's ever had any kind of repair at their house, everybody from the cable repair guy, right, to you know everybody else that does any kind of trade, has experienced what I call the 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 inability of people in space, particularly sole proprietors, to actually run
Hmm.
and operate a business, right? It's like, hey,
Right.
my toilet won't stop running, my faucet's leaking, the door sticks every time I try and open it. Can you adjust that? Oh yeah, I'll be there Tuesday at 10 a.m. Right, and then Friday at 3, and they still haven't shown up. And not only are they
Right.
not shown up, they're not answering their phone. Right, and so that
Hmm.
was basically kind of what he was telling me. And then he punctuates this lament with a story. And so the story goes like this: he has a guy who is extremely handy, right? This guy, he's not a licensed plumber, not a licensed electrician, but is very skilled and can do anything just about in electrical and plumbing and everything in between,
Hmm.
framing, sheetrock, you name it. And and so this guy had done a lot of work for my business partner, Dan. And but he kept not sending invoices, right? So the other thing about people in that space that's important to note is, they're really good at what they do. They might be
Yep.
great craftsmen. They might do fantastic plumbing or electrical work, or they might do, they're really good at trim, cabinetry. But, when you've worked in a physical job all day, the last thing you want to do at 5 o'clock when you come home is,
Hmm.
produce 5 invoices. You don't want to do
Yep.
that's why you're in that role, is because you don't like administrative work. You're not an office person.
Hmm.
And so that was the other problem. And so this guy who had done all of these jobs for my business partner, he my business partner kept saying, hey, will you send me those invoices? Like, I want to get you paid. I just need you to send an invoice. Oh yeah,
Right.
I'm on it. So this is after about 6 months of accumulated work on various properties, right? So my business partner
Hmm.
at the time managed 100 and something units, right, for probably 40 different owners, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
um, the guy calls Dan, my business partner, and says, hey, I've got those invoices. Can I swing by the office? Like, oh yeah, sure, come on over. And so he comes over and he's got this stack, right? Like, I'm not kidding, like a stack of invoices,
Wow.
6 months worth. And he's like, so yeah, can you just write me a check real quick? I'm headed out to go to Montana on an elk hunting trip, and I was hoping to get, and my partner looks at him like, are you, like, seriously? Like, I mean, I can write you a check for the most current, couple of weeks if you need to, but so it's that kind of thing. And I looked at him and I
Hmm.
said, Dan, that's a business. Like, let's take a risk. Let's find somebody that's hire them. We'll make them a W-2 employee, we'll buy a vehicle, we'll outfit it with tools,
Hmm.
and we'll just kind of turn them loose. Right. And I said, how busy could you keep somebody? And he goes, oh, I could keep somebody busy 20 hours a week. Right. One guy.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, I can go find us a couple more clients. And so that's how the business started, was just really very much a back of the napkin sitting at a pub in Spokane, Washington is how we launched the business. And so
Wow.
pulled out my laptop, found the name. We immediately registered with the Secretary of State, and that was in 2018. And so that guy stayed with us. It actually is still with us today.
Wow.
We've hired a couple more guys in Spokane, and we've recently launched in Tulsa. And what we've determined is property managers in every city in the country have a need of this, because what they have to do now is
Hmm.
they've got to have a Rolodex, to borrow an old term. They got to have a list of guys that they just
Hmm.
run through, like, I like this guy. He shows up, he does good work. We'll call him first. Well, he's too busy, or he's decided to quit and go, I'm going to go build decks up at Grand Lake, or
Right.
I'm gonna be a roofer, or I'm gonna go frame houses, right? I'm gonna join this crew. They've offered me, $22 an hour instead of $20,
Hmm.
right? And so they're very transient in and out of the business. And so we've just figured out, we've kind of stumbled really kind of into a niche of serving property managers, because at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is, they get paid to keep these units fully rented and occupied.
Hmm.
Right? And so the quicker they can get the work done, get a new tenant in, the owner is happy because the cash flow resumes. They want someone reliable who's going to show up when they say they're going to show up, that charges a reasonable rate. And then they
Right.
get, proof and evidence that the work was done, both from photographic standpoint, which we provide photos, this is not unique to us. Lots of people do this, and then we invoice timely. So, we basically take everything that you love about handyman, minus all the things that you don't, which is
Hmm.
untimely billing and unreliability and not showing up when you say you're going to show up. So that's
Right.
that's in a nutshell is our business.
So you said you're in Washington and now you're in Oklahoma. Are there plans to continue to expand?
Yes. We actually, both my partner and I, at the time we started the business, we had day jobs. I worked for a
Hmm.
division of United Health Group for about
Okay.
11 years. I was in a corporate job that was very good. Very comfortable. I was good at it. But it was a day job. And so we kind of did this on
Hmm.
the side, and it really just kind of grew on its own. It
Hmm.
proliferated. And so we were, without kind of breaking our necks, we're able to add, three, four more clients. And in that space, you don't need 20 clients in a market. You need,
Hmm.
right, which is good for us. You have five clients that have 4,000 doors or 4,000 units that you manage,
Hmm.
right? So, um, and it simplifies a lot of what we do because we're interfacing with, fewer than 10 people on the property management side as
Hmm.
opposed to 4,000 or 5,000. So we
Right.
really like our business model. We think the opportunity for our business is, is it Amazon.com? Is it, the new iPhone? No, it's not sexy,
Hmm.
but it's really good business. And
Yeah.
it's with a segment of the market that really kind of needs our services. So our biggest challenges are hiring correctly, finding people that want to work, that take
Hmm.
pride in what they do, that kind of treat the company's reputation like it's their own. And there are fewer and fewer people out there like that these days. But if we hire well, and then we have a really good training process that we put them through, and then we turn them loose, and the upside for them
Hmm.
is, two of our employees are in fact former sole proprietors that ran their own, kind of repair maintenance
Hmm.
and contractor, subcontractor type of businesses, right? And so they get the benefit of, I get to do the work that I enjoy, but I don't have any of the headaches. I don't have to deal with, state regulations,
Hmm.
taxes, um, insurance, all those things. So,
Right.
they jump in a van in the morning and they go to 5 or 6 or 7 jobs and they go home at the end of the day and they don't think about it anymore. We
Hmm.
we have to think about it. So that's kind of our proposition to our employees.
That's pretty cool. So you've been a part of several businesses as an owner or a partner. What are some of the lessons that you've learned as you've taken each step forward in being a business owner?
Well, so a couple of things, and I'm not the first person to articulate this, but if you're familiar with Y Combinator out in Silicon Valley, they are an entity that was started by a guy named Paul Graham, tech Silicon Valley investor, and they
Hmm.
started this, it's an incubator essentially, right? And one of their principles, one of their I guess requirements is they don't take any companies that don't have a co-founder, right? So in other words, it's important to have a partner. And the reason it's important to have a partner is because being an entrepreneur and doing the things that you got to do, sometimes you need somebody else to kind of kick your butt. And sometimes you just need someone to pick up the phone and call and go, oh my gosh, can I just let me just complain about
Right.
this customer for 5 minutes, right? I just got to get it off my chest, right? Your business partner is in some sense kind of your therapist, if you
Right.
will. But
And vice
having
versa, I'm
somebody,
sure.
yeah, having somebody to share the obligation and the workload is really important.
Hmm.
And secondarily to that, I would say having somebody that you trust and that has a complementary skill set, right? So
Mm.
my business partner Dan in Fast Fixer, we have similar things that we're both good at, but his skill set is different than mine, right? And also his risk tolerance, his outlook, right? I'm the guy
Mm.
who's like, oh man, I just talked to this other property management company. They're going to send us all their business.
Yeah.
And he's the one that will say, okay, Rob, that's great. Let's have this conversation in a month and see how many actual work orders they've
Hmm.
sent us, right? And so we kind of balance each other out. He's the more, risk averse, you know,
Hmm.
methodical, and realistic, pragmatic, and I'm the optimist of the two of us. Like, oh, it's gonna
Hmm.
be great. We're gonna do all this stuff. He's like, well, yeah, probably, but like it's not gonna happen tomorrow.
Right, right. That's awesome. Yeah, and it really is important to have a confidant and somebody to bounce things off of, and somebody who's going to shoot to you straight too, right? And say that is really not a good idea, and here's why. Because so many bad decisions have been made just from
Yeah.
emotion.
Yeah, that's true. And it really is, for any of your listeners that are married or have been married or divorced. I mean, it's when you get into a business relationship with somebody, it's like being married. I mean, you've really got to choose well, and you've got to, you've got to ask the what ifs, like, oh man, we love each other, we're great friends, we always get along, everything we do is great, but
Hmm.
what you need to bear in mind is, life is dynamic and it changes, circumstances change, and knowing that on the other side of that relationship that you have somebody that's rational, but most importantly, honest and forthright and has integrity, that if things
Hmm.
get difficult or things go sideways, that not that people don't have their own self-interest, but that that you're not in bed with somebody that's really going to try and um, you know burn you up, you know
Hmm.
they'll throw you to the wolves and walk away from it. So I would say business partner with honesty, integrity, somebody that you can trust the words that come out of their mouth is really important.
Question that started this whole thing. What would you say your business superpower is?
I would say relationships. I have, uh, and I didn't know this about myself early on, but I had a professor at ORU who was just uh, brilliant and amazing. And
Hmm.
he told me at one point, actually, he said in front of me to somebody else that he goes, Rob is the best relationship builder I've ever seen. Right. And that really, I mean, that was 25 years ago. Right. And it really
Hmm.
impacted me. And so I have always had kind of roles in sales or sales management or growth or customer acquisition, but that's probably what I'm best at is building relationships, knowing when is the right time to you know to act on that relationship, and knowing more
Mm.
importantly when is not the right time to
Right.
act on it, right? And then still, if the answer is no, then still being friends or still maintaining that relationship, because at the end of the day, there's no business deal that's more important than your own personal integrity. And nobody,
Hmm.
people sometimes want to be sold, but nobody wants to feel like they're a mark.
Right. Yeah, and people buy from people they know, like, and trust, right? So building that relationship so important there.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny. I've seen people buy from people that they can't stand, which I always, you know,
Yeah, that's fair.
just surprised me. It happens. It happens regularly. It's not the majority of those interactions, but that is one methodology for sales, and it's something it's never been an appealing strategy to me. Um,
Right.
it is effective for some people.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe I should put a caveat on there. People prefer to buy from somebody they know, like, and trust.
Yes, that is
Um,
100% true.
last question here. What nugget of advice would you have for other business owners?
Don't quit ever. Um, the market is, the invisible hand of the market will reward businesses that meet a need and that do so at a good price.
Hmm.
But competitors are out there. Some of them are not nice, and they'll do things that they'll run you out of business out of spite.
Hmm.
And when you think you've gone as far as you can go further than that. And so I would say don't quit. Exhaust every last avenue, every opportunity. And the other thing I would say is it's amazing what activity creates. And so what I mean
Mm-hmm.
by that is this. After we sold our company and I was kind of, wandering around, not really sure what to do. But I started just taking meetings, right? And meeting people for coffee. I'm a cigar guy, so I'd meet people for a cigar, have a drink, do something. And it was amazing how just that activity has led to other opportunities, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're sitting around wondering, like, how come it's not like I need to do, like, so just do something, just take a step. I'm always reminded, I don't know why this song sticks in my head, but there's this, those claymation cartoons of like
Mm-hmm.
Santa Claus is coming to town and, Frosty the Snow. There's a tune in one of those that's put one foot in front of the other, right? And soon you'll be walking out the door. But
Mm-hmm.
those words just kind of ring to me because sometimes you don't need to know the destination. You might think that like this is the outcome we want, but you might end up over here. And
Right.
so just keep taking the next step and the next step because I'm a person of faith and I'm a Christian and I believe in God's interest in me as a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and I think that God's provision and God's favor, whatever that means, um, you know, c- comes to people that take action. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the Bible's filled with all kinds of stories, and none of them have to do with, well, Moses got up and turned on the TV and watched TV for 8 hours today and
Right.
sat and watched Netflix, right? It was always somebody's doing something, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you've got to just take that next step. You don't know, is it the right direction? Is it to my left? Is it to my right? But I'm a firm believer that if you are a person of faith and you are seeking God's will in your life, that you know the the doors he wants to shut, he's going to shut. The windows he wants to open,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to open. And sometimes you got to climb through the window. It might be uncomfortable, might be painful. One of my favorite
Mm-hmm.
expressions, I have two expressions, and I'll kind of leave you with this, Eric, but I have two expressions about being an entrepreneur that I really, really like. One of them I think is attributed to Peter Thiel. I don't know who said the other one, but the first one is being an entrepreneur is like chewing glass. And it is, right? I mean, you've got to just, there are days that you just have to grind it out and do the uncomfortable thing. Like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to do this thing or that thing. Just
Mm-hmm.
do it and get it done and move on to the next thing on your to-do list. The other example I like is building a startup business is like jumping off a cliff and building the airplane on your way to the ground, hoping
Mm-hmm.
that you make the turn before it crashes, right? It's very much that the healthcare business that we started and sold a couple years ago. I'd go in the office on a Tuesday with a to-do list of I've got to do these five things. By 9 a.m., that list was thrown in the trash because a
Mm-hmm.
customer had a bad experience, or we had a physician that didn't get paid for a service that one of our patients, had gotten. And so you've just got to be able to deal with whatever comes your way while still working through the to-do list. But every day you don't know what's going to hit you in the face, and
Mm-hmm.
you just, the guy that wins is the guy that keeps getting up even though he's punched in the face over and over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, some great pearls here, Rob. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing and teaching us a little bit about your business and your business superpower. We appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Eric.
You're very welcome.